When we first started Shepherd Center, or talked about starting it, we knew we had to have a medical director, so we did find Dr. Apple. But then he had a colleague at Peachtree Orthopedic named Herndon Murray. And both of them had had training in California, Rancho Los Amigos, which was doing fellowships for spinal care. And so Herndon knew what it meant, and he started hanging around over there, and we were camping out in a for-profit hospital, and we were not-for-profit, and we couldn't actually hire him right away.
I got over there, and Dr. Apple said, we'll be glad to have you here as the, second doctor, but they're not going to pay you anything. And I said, well, that's fine if, we could bill fee-for-service, and sometimes we got paid and sometimes we didn't, but that was secondary at that point.
It was evident to me and to everybody else after he'd been there a week or two that he was very knowledgeable, very approachable, and would be a great addition to the treatment team.
So that worked out, and 48 years later, I'm still here. They haven't fired me, and I'm forever grateful for the opportunity that they gave me. Well, I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician because I liked working with kids so much. What changed my mind was when I was in medical school on the pediatric service at Charity Hospital in New Orleans. Most of the kids in the hospital were dying of cancer. And it was just, I really was uncomfortable with the bad news on pediatrics. And then one night, a kid came in just screaming with a broken arm. And we gave him a little anesthesia, popped his arm back in place, put on a cast, and he said, "Is that it?" And a few minutes later, he was running around the emergency room showing everybody his cast. And I said, I think I'd rather do that. What started my interest in spinal cord injury was a patient that came in the emergency room one night. He'd been on a car wreck, and he was obviously quadriplegic. He couldn't move his arms or his legs. So we got him stabilized a little bit, and I spent that night learning a lot about spinal cord injury. And then all of a sudden, I knew more about spinal cord injury than any of my peers. And he stayed in the hospital. Every morning I'd go by and see if he was getting any better, and he never did. And one morning I came in, and the room was empty. And they said he died during the night. And the nurse said it's probably the best thing that could have happened to him. And it was the idea for a spinal cord injury was that there really wasn't anything to do for him. There wasn't any rehab here.
I know that spinal care has changed in the 48 years that we've been doing this. And so he's been part of seeing the changes and really been the catalyst for some of them and making sure that it improved, and it has. It's been dramatic in the difference of when we first started and now how they approach care for patients.
When I hear about the history of Shepherd Center and how it started and the impact that he has brought to this hospital and to patients and the amount of surgeries and the lives that he's touched throughout the years, it's incredible. And not only because of his medical expertise, but it's the humble nature in which he carries himself. So he's a superhero to many.
I think Dr. Murray is perfect for this role because deep inside, he's still a kid. And the other thing is he has just a great love for these kids. He's kind of gruff on the outside, and you're not always sure, the kids are not always sure, well, does he like me or not? But he would do anything for them. And you could see that he went above and beyond to make sure that they had what they need.
You never know what to expect from the adolescents. They come in, they're in complete shock. Something tragic has happened to them, it's changed their whole life. And it really only takes them a day or two to get with the other kids who are in the same situation and start acting like teenagers again.
He connects with the adolescents in a way that I've never seen any other doctor that I've worked here can do. He will take the time to research where they're from, what city they're in.
Now, I must say there's no city in Georgia that Dr. Murray doesn't know or the history behind that. He knows how many traffic lights there are, or if there isn't any traffic lights. And so when he goes into the rooms, he already knows that, and so he's talking to the patients, and he turns to the family members and says, "Hey, are there traffic lights now in your city?" And the families will laugh because they can relate, and they'll say something like, "Oh yes, we've got one now." And it creates that atmosphere of like, oh, it's just a laughter. And that gives them a platform to open up and relax, and then maybe to start talking about their clinical questions and or expectations of us as an orthopedic team.
And one day we had a patient, a kid in the ICU here with an acute injury, and he would not open his eyes. It was like, this is a bad dream, wake me up when it's over. And we made rounds and the nurses said, we know he's not brain injured, but I looked up and he had a Georgia pennant over the bed. And I said, he's a Georgia fan. I bet he's gonna be sorry. They're gonna get whooped this week in bed. And one eye opens and he says, "You wanna bet?" I mean, those are the first words from him. I ended up knowing most of the mascots of most of the high schools around Georgia just by meeting the kids.
If you can instill some fun, you can instill some hope. And when there's hope, there's reason to continue to go on. And there's meaning and there's purpose.
I met Dr. Murray way back in 2008 when I was a patient at Shepherd, actually. So I had a spinal cord injury. I was at the beach and dove into a wave and woke up in the hospital after surgery and ended up at Shepherd, fortunately. And Dr. Murray was my doctor. Looking back and now working with the same team that was part of my rehab team when I was a patient here, it's pretty surreal. I was on patient rounds and in the gym trying to catch some patients, and there's Dr. Murray still working here. Still with the same smile on his face. I think it took me back to when, he'd come into my room and check on me. I swear he had the same kind of infectious smiles. He's kept that same attitude through all these years.
He had a young man that he worked with, I think this was back in 1987, and he was a youngster who I think was about 13 or 14. That young man came back when he was in his 40s and presented a picture to Dr. Murray of himself hunting. He still had his spinal cord injury. He still was using his power chair. He owned this hunting company, and it was next to the picture he had of he and Dr. Murray when he was a young boy here. And you could see, he had made a successful life for himself.
The big thing at Shepherd when I was a patient here was that, you don't say I can't. It was always like, I can't yet. Anytime anyone said I can't, the therapists were quick to add that yet on there. It's like, you may not be able to do it right now, but that's not to say that you won't be able to do X, Y, Z in the future.
When I started, there was literally no hope for somebody with a broken neck. Now you see what's going on here. We've had kids finish Shepherd, become lawyers, become doctors. It's just changed so dramatically since the days where people thought the best thing that could happen to them is just die.
Not only was Dr. Murray dedicated to the kids, but he very much supported his staff.
There are a lot of nurses who are still here after all these years who said he brought them to tears, but they were better nurses because of it. He demanded perfection all of the time.
Being just halfway there is not good enough. These are lives that have been greatly impacted by these injuries. And if you're going to work with them, then you're going to give them your all. Because it's a center of excellence, and he promoted that.
It was all in for him. He wanted it to be the best unit. I think we were called SCI B, and he said, I don't want to be a B team. Let's just change it. So we changed it to SCI 4, but he just really made us more cohesive. Nursing, therapy, counseling, and all the other disciplines, we worked so much more closely together under his leadership.
We may have started out rough, but I love that man, and I am grateful for what he has given me and what he has taught me, not just about my job, but just commitment to life in general.
When I drive down Peachtree now and see the new center being built, and I think about when we started as a Shepherd in a 4-bed unit of a local hospital, that how much it's grown, and it's grown a lot because of Dr. Murray's expertise.
And I know he's like the rest of us when he drives in here or walks through the tunnel and looks out. How did this all happen? We're not sure sometimes, but it's been exciting to see it, and I know that he's been very proud to be part of it, and he's been a big part of it.